Alright guys, so the main event just finished, and let me know, did you think that that main fight was a robbery? Because I goddamn did. I had Caceres winning the first round, the fourth round, and the fifth round. And if you look at all the numbers for the fight, I believe he got more takedowns, he got more strikes. I can't believe that they gave that to Albazi. That's crazy. That's crazy. And it sort of put a whole dampener on the card, wasn't it? I'm gonna go through most of the fights on the card, not all of them, because there wasn't that much to say for all the fights on the card. Like the prelims were better than the whole main card. And that main event was technical. Fifth round was fun, fourth round was fun, but it just sort of got ruined by that decision. That split decision was terrible. It's like 90% of the people on social media clearly see what sort of a robbery that was. And the UFC staff usually go along with the UFC, but even Laura Sanko at the commentary booth, she's like, geez, I don't know about that one. That's a shitty way to return to the UFC after 2 weeks off. And the main card as well didn't really help it. So it was a robbery. You got to go back and watch it for yourself if you think Albazi won that. I'm going to be very interested to see what the Weasel says about that one. Just a disappointing main event. The co-main event though for me, that was the fight of the night. Caceres versus Pineda. That's a very fun fight. I'm happy that we had that one at least because the main event was ruined by the judges. The first round, Caceres was looking awesome until that armbar attempt from Pineda. And I think, and this was shown a lot on the card, there's been a conversation about it lately. I think it's just shown how useless Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is when it comes to high-level MMA in the current year. There's just no point going for submissions on bottom. I will say this for Pineda though, even though his BJJ on the bottom was useless and BJJ on the bottom continues to be useless as a part of the sport, I loved him in that third round. You know, the judge was saying, defend yourself, otherwise we're gonna have to stop it. The ref, was saying that. And he was telling the ref to stay out of the fight, get away from it. And even though those body shots were stinging him, and after each one, you could see him like breathe in heavily and almost want to throw up, those body shots were hurting him so much. He still told the ref to piss off and kept fighting all the way till the end. And even though Caceres was looking strong, Caceres was certainly gonna win that fight, Pineda didn't give up. He didn't give up at any point, all the way until the bell went off. He kept bringing the fight to him. And you know, if you guys have seen a lot of my reaction videos now at this point, you know I love to see the savage in the fighter come out. Like we're watching goddamn cage fighting here. I want to see some people who've got that anger in them. And Pineda had that all the way to the end. So that was amazing. I love that one so much. If he doesn't get the bonus for the fight of the night, even though they lost, like they both have to have the fight of the night for that one. That was an awesome fight. Next one that I wanted to talk about was Miller versus Butler. Like, I know it didn't last long. It was a couple of seconds. Like the replay, they showed the entire fight again, but good on Miller. I think that he is definitely on track to make it to UFC 300. I just, the way that he switched that kid's lights out. Now, I do think him coming in on short notice and having such a quick weight cut probably is what, you know, gave in to his chin being a little bit soft. But my God, what a knockout. He was unconscious on his way down. The way his leg crumpled from underneath him. Horrible, horrible. A bit of an early stoppage, obviously. You'd like to see it go on a bit longer, but... Now, Elliott versus Altamirano. My God, did Elliott need a win just for his own personal demons in life. After what happened between him and his wife and how it happened so publicly, like the whole MMA world saw that happen to him. I think there was like an energy in him that he needed to get out. He came out of the gates and beat the piss out of Altamirano. I mean, it was, you know, it was in the scrambling, it was in the grappling, but he didn't let off, and he just allowed Altamirano to just gas himself out with all of the work that he was doing in the clinch, in the grappling, in the control time, in the ground and pound towards the end of the rounds. He had so much anger built up in him and so much frustration that he just let it out all on the cage. And it was sort of sad in a way to see his post-fight interview because he still didn't seem like a happy man. You know, like he got all of that out of him and he was still like just saying how much he loves his kids, but there was still like, you could tell there was still some sadness in that dude. And fair enough. It's great to see him get the win. If that's the kind of thing that he needs to get in there, that Anthony Smith PTSD level is what he needs to get the win out of there, it made for a great performance. Yeah, to have all that happen on the world stage, and then to walk into a cage in your underwear and have to put it on the line, and then to perform and to get it done. Good work, Tim Elliott. Gina, shame on you. Shame. A few fights because, let's face it, they were boring. This is like where the card started to really slow down its pace. Getting to Santos versus Munoz. Santos was on a mission today to give out free vasectomies. It was horrible. Straight away, he just throws a horrific kick straight to the groin, enough to make me want to vomit while I was watching it. And then he goes back into his corner after delivering such a devastating groin kick and stays warm, stays fluid, starts shadow boxing. He couldn't give a shit about what he did to Munoz's boys in the future. What a savage move. But then the fight continued to go on, and it was a hell of a fight. Like, this was the fight of the night until we got to the co-main event. That first round, incredibly intense, lots of sub-attempts, lots of good scrambling. A knee to the head, I thought that would have put him out, and then another return shot to the groin. But then we get back to the problem of BJJ, jiu-jitsu from the bottom, using it instead of trying to scramble out on the bottom, being comfortable on the bottom, on your back like a bitch in these submission attempts that aren't going to work out, and you know that the judges are scoring against you. So you're putting yourself in this Hail Mary situation because you love jiu-jitsu so much, where you're on your back, the points are racking up against you, and if you do not get that sub attempt from the bottom, you're going to lose the fight in that position. And these fighters in current year are so good at this that they know to keep their arms nice and tight and when to go for the ground and pound. They're not going to get caught with arm bars and leg locks. And even when they nearly do get put into arm bars and leg locks, which we saw a couple of times tonight, they're going to slip out of it. They're going to slip out of it almost every single time. It's the chances of winning from that position become lower and lower as you move yourself from the amateurs to the professionals to the UFC. You've got to learn to use that as a way to create scrambles. If you get knocked down and you roll into a bottom position, something that, you know, happens to Charles Oliveira a lot, you use the submissions to create scrambles to work yourself out of it. You don't sit there and work on a submission attempt from bottom for 4 minutes in a round. You're going to end up losing that round. And if that's your entire strategy for the entire fight, not good, not a good showing. Arlovski and Mays. Look, it was good to see Arlovski back and in the cage. I know he didn't win and he got chinned, but you know, maybe seeing him back in the cage, as much as it's awesome to see the vets in there, maybe it's time for him to think about hanging up the gloves. To me, the whole fight was a bit sloppy and a bit low level, a bit of a, you know, standard heavyweight fight. I don't see Mays being able to, you know, really stand with anyone in the top 10. You know, finished Arlovski, but he didn't make it look clean and crisp. And as the skill level at the top end of heavyweight is getting better and better, that is something to worry about if you're Mays. Gustafsson versus Castaneda. This was an interesting one. Gustafsson, in the second round, is what was so interesting to me. He was swinging like an enraged autist. He was just throwing his arms, flailing them around, and then definitely did an intentional headbutt. He was leading purely with his head. Combat Sambo, where his background is, you're allowed to sort of throw the head a bit. So I think that's something that he picked up in his amateur career, but he's got to learn to let it go, because he was just throwing his arms. He was pretty much swimming freestyle with his fists. Again, like a madman, and then just led forward with his head and was not even ashamed of throwing the headbutt. You know, they took the point and he seemed kind of annoyed that they took the point. Like, dude, you're not allowed to do that. Like, I love the savage energy. Keep the headbutt energy, but follow the rules and channel that into your fists and maybe aim them as well. In the end, Castaneda ended up dominating the grappling, winning the fight. Good on him, because Gustafsson was a dirty, dirty cheater. He was grabbing the cage in the third round. Malaki versus Muhammad. This is what I'm talking about, guys. The prelims. The prelims were so much fun compared to the main event, weren't they? I obviously was going for Malaki, being an Aussie boy himself, and it was disappointing, wasn't it? I mean, Malaki, he got dropped hard, straight through those monstrous eyebrows, good hammer fists, bit of an early stoppage, but that's all right. What was so interesting about this fight was when they panned to the crowd at a soccer stadium that was watching this fight at 2 a.m. in the morning. Here's the question for that. Are those 8,000-ish people, let's say soccer stadium, let's say 8,000 people, let's say 4,000 people, whatever. Are those 4,000 people paying on one Fight Pass account? How does the UFC feel about this? Now, I know it's good for the sport to start growing it in new regions, but like, we're just doing one account, fill up a stadium, everyone come and watch for free. Can we set that up in Australia for Malaki's next fight? That crowd must have been losing their minds though. 2 a.m. in the morning, got the flush knockout, good on them. Jamie Mullarkey, come on, mate. The last fight that I wanted to talk about was Blackshear versus Lacerda. Lacerda, again, came in with that BJJ problem off the back, trying to look for a submission when it's just not there at these levels of the UFC. And Blackshear is striking. You know, the commentary had something to say about it, and I understand that, but to me, it looked very fluid. He looked very comfortable. He was sort of picking his shots well. I know it wasn't exactly an orthodox way to strike, but it looked like he was in control of his weapons, even though he sort of fights with that fluid, creative stance. Exactly like Bobby Green, but that sort of Bobby Green mentality where his arms are down low and he's picking his shots and he's sort of rolling with things. It was very, very impressive to watch from Blackshear. I enjoyed that a lot. I'm gonna be backing him for his next fight because I think one of the things that it really comes down to when it comes to picking fights in the future is their fight IQ and how much dog they have in them. If they're willing to push through it and sweat it out, and they have a bit of fight IQ, then that's generally as good as you're going to get when it comes to watching them start to move their way through the rankings. So that was it, guys. Another fight night in the books. Let me know, what do you think about the main event? Was that a robbery? Who would you give the fight of the night to? And how do you feel about the way that the card was laid out in whole? Were the prelims more exciting to you than the actual